So staying in fantasy was safe, but it wasn't really going anywhere. And this is what I mean when I say there's a difference between a dream and a fantasy. Fantasy is when we create something in our construct something in our mind, something that potentially might happen, like Prince Charming might come to save us, or I will be discovered and I'll be a movie star overnight. Versus a dream, which is something that is like, okay, I know where I am now. So it's more based in reality. I know where I want to go, and I'm taking some actions in order to get there. And there's a transition where, yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so there's a transition of acknowledging that you're in fantasy, or at least that's what I had to do, and then move it into more realistic situation scenario where now it becomes an actionable dream, that direction that I'm pursuing. So I'm pursuing a dream, but I'm actually taking steps towards it.
So what do you think was keeping you in fantasy those years when you're telling people about it, you're talking about it, but you weren't taking action? What was keeping you there?
Sure. So I was invested in the fantasy, right? Because there's numerous things, but one thing that really came on and really made me think about it and start changing things was the fact that if I took action, if I decided to do the things actually what I'm doing today by being in acting school and pursuing this career, if it didn't work, the fantasy would collapse. And so,
right.
So it was more important for me to hold on to the fantasy than to take a risk of it actually not working, and it no longer having fantasy. The pain to deal with that seemed too great.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like, even just on a micro level, in some ways, this might seem weird, but if I have a week where I have a lot of clients reach out to work with me, like new clients, I feel worse because I'm like, what if they don't work with me? It's almost like, what if I talk to them and we connect and I make a mistake in our conversation and I am a failure? Like, I can fail. When I have no potential clients, new potential new clients, I can't fail that week. It feels safer versus, even though I do have, a dream and a goal of growing my practice at this point, it feels safer on the weeks when there's no action really happening versus on the weeks when there's a bunch of potential. So I can relate to it, and I hope everyone listening, like, maybe think about, is there an area in your life where, yeah, you might lose the fantasy, which ultimately you kind of do, right? Like, I think we're going to get there in your story, but in our fantasy, and I know you keep talking about Prince Charming, and as someone who's like, I'm like pansexual, I'm attracted to women, but I was like fed this fucking prince, like being socialized as a woman, I was fed the Prince Charming story. So I didn't realize I was attracted to women until I was probably in my 20s, really, because I was just like, oh yeah, Prince Charming. Like, it's like a brainwashing we get. And I hope it's changing. I know it's changing incrementally, but yeah, there's a little trigger for me when you use that example, because I'm like, oh, fuck that fucking story. Because it also told me not to make any money, right? Like, it's been a huge block for me. It's like, you marry somebody and they pay for you, and all you have to do is you have to look beautiful and be charming.
Right.
And get married, and you shouldn't even want money, was like what I was told growing up. It's like, I should just look pretty. So there's a lot in that particular fantasy, which I did have for a long time, and then I had to fucking burn it to the ground, because it's like, that was not a fantasy that was serving me. I realized as I grew older.